Hey y'all, have you ever wondered what is a conspiracy theory? A theory is a plausible general principle offered to explain phenomenon. This I got from an online dictionary, Merriam-Webster. Conspiracy is the act of joining in a secret agreement to do an unlawful or wrongful act, like scheme, a plot or underhand intrigue, a carefully arranged and systematic program of action. Okay, so a conspiracy theory, if you put those two definitions together, a plausible general principle that certain interests have a carefully arranged and systematic program of action that explains this phenomenon, the weather. Like Indians or Native Americans, sorry, no offense to anybody, Native Americans did a rain dance and it rained. That's a plausible general principle that certain interests, Native Americans, have schemed, put together a carefully arranged and systematic program of action. They danced, which explains the rain. Or another one you could say is a plausible general principle that certain interests, have schemed, that is a plot or underhand intrigue that explains the weather. That's a conspiracy theory. Both of those sort of fit that definition, don't they? Except that one of them has a negative connotation. Why is that? Well, let's see. Let's look into what they say a conspiracy theory is. And actually, Merriam-Webster and dictionary.com both have definitions for the phrase. Merriam-Webster says, a theory that explains an event is the result of a secret plot by usually powerful conspirators. Dictionary.com, a theory that rejects the standard explanation for event and credits a covert group with carrying out a secret plot. The standard explanation for an event. Okay. I think now we're getting onto something, because what is standard? Standard is an adjective. It means regularly and widely used or supplied. Supplied by whom? Well, if you use standard as a noun, it's something established by authority as a model or example. So if we put that together, we can use this as a definition. A plausible general principle that rejects the regularly and widely used explanation established by authority, instead believes a plausible general principle that certain interests have schemed to explain a certain phenomenon. Okay? So how is it so you reject the plausible principle given to you by authority and instead believe a plausible principle? That's where they get you with the instead. Because do you have to believe that a secret covert group, can you believe that it was a rain dance? Are you allowed to believe that it was a rain dance that affected the weather? Does it have to be some kind of a sinister political group? Why does it have to be political? And this is a conspiracy theory is usually, well, I don't know how you even bring it up. Let's see. Conspiracy theory. All right, Dr. Joseph M. Pierre, M.D., this guy. Writes for Psychology Today. Okay. A health and sciences clinical professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Biobehavior Sciences, David Geffen, School of Medicine at UCLA, and the acting chief of mental health community care systems. Oh, you're just acting, I see. At the VA. His work focuses on the treatment of individuals with severe mental disorders. Although his clinical practice centers on the care of hospitalized patients who suffered from psychotic disorders, he has a long-standing interest in the gray area between psychopathology and normality and the psychological underpinnings of everyday life. Okay, so he said on a podcast, conspiracy theories differ from, for example, religious beliefs that are grounded in faith and arguably a wish to believe. Conspiracy theories, in contrast, start with a disbelief in conventional wisdom in favor of a secret, malevolent, real story that's being hidden from the public through some cover-up. There's good evidence that this disbelief is rooted in mistrust, although I think that's an underappreciated aspect of how conspiracy theories arise. Mistrust. Why would anyone mistrust the government? I mean, it's not like they did experiments with Agent Orange or dropped a bomb in Japan or the Tuskegee Airmen or anything else that they've been involved in. Huh, yeah, you must be crazy. Oh, here, something else that Dr. Pierre wrote. Are conspiracy theorists crazy? Well, to begin with, let's differentiate belief in conspiracy theories like QAnon from the kind of delusional beliefs that are used to define mental illness and psychosis. Generally speaking, delusions are false and unshared beliefs that are often based on subjective inner experience and whose content is often self-referential, including the believer. In contrast, conspiracy theories are usually shared beliefs that don't explicitly involve the believer and are based on external evidence that one finds out there, such as on the internet. Unlike delusions, conspiracy theories may or may not turn out to be true. After all, they're theories. Hold on, I need a drink. So, based on this distinction, people who believe in conspiracy theories, however crazy they might sound, are no more delusional than those who believe in literal interpretations of religious texts. So they are no more delusional than someone who has faith. Although he says in his other article that faith is the opposite. All right, Dr. Pierre. You can do it both ways. Let's see, what is faith? I don't want to get one of my books wet. Okay, what is faith? Faith. Now, according to the dictionary, faith is an unquestioning belief. It's also, it can also be a religion, like Catholicism. Now, Paul, in Hebrews chapter 11, he summarizes that faith is hope in things unseen. Faith is hope in things unseen. Now, did you know that Hebrews was actually the 17th book written in the New Testament? The first book written in the New Testament was written by James, chronologically. And in James 2:12, he says, "Speak and act as those who are going to be judged by the law that gives freedom. A person is justified in what he does, and not by faith alone." In what he does. What does he do? Speak and act as those who are going to be judged by the law that gives freedom. It's interesting that James is the first book written in the New Testament, because when you go through your Bible, what are you going to find first? You're going to find Romans. Romans 1:5. Paul wrote this one. Romans 1:5. Stand by, I got my Bible right here. Romans 1:5. The obedience that comes from faith. Through him, for his name's sake, we received grace and apostleship to call people from all Gentiles to the obedience that comes from faith. And you are among those who are called to belong to Jesus Christ. Obedience. What is obedience? Obedience is compliance to a command, prohibition, or known law. It's also submission to authority. Oh, where did I hear that word? Standard. Something established by authority. So, faith, the compliance to command, the submission to authority that comes from an unquestioning belief in authority. That, folks, is not a conspiracy theory. That's a belief. That's a belief. And so even though this New Testament is completely out of order, the book of Enoch has been omitted, Judith, wisdom, the Nag Hammadi, all of that other stuff. Every single book in here, except for Luke, has been written by a Jew, so there's not a diversity. There's no women represented as authors. There's like, 1,000 books by Paul. By Paul? Why Paul? Didn't it say on Peter, hey Peter, on this rock, So what kind of personality type believes in conspiracy theories? Oh, y'all, I didn't print this one out, but this one also came from Dr. Pierre. Psychologists finding a conspiracy where there is none, call that illusionary pattern perception. Illusionary pattern perception. Okay, that's very interesting. An illusionary, so they can see that what you see in your mind doesn't actually exist. It's interesting because mental imagery, a mental invention or recreation, either with or in the absence of direct sensory stimulation, different from retinal or iconic images. It is a subjective phenomenon and not directly observable. Okay, that's by this guy. A creative and indefatigable researcher and a key contributor to our understanding of imagery. From MIT. Associate Professor of Psychology at Texas A&M. Now, in his research, he shows these patterns. Okay, patterns. Imagined visual constructions. Subject could recognize emergent patterns that they did not anticipate. All of the subjects were able to detect at least one emergent form in their imagined constructions. So what's illusionary about the pattern when you can't see it, but somebody who has studied it says that, yeah, they can see it? And again, how is it different from faith? Because it doesn't follow the standard. So that's interesting. It seems pretty basic, doesn't it? I don't know. The term first came out in 1870. Well, that we know of, right? It was written on page 141 of the Lancet. This investigative journalist was looking at conditions in an asylum. And he came up with some recommendations. And the doctor that was in charge said, the reviewers said that the other doctors, it was at least more plausible than the conspiracy theory of Mr. Charles Reed. So, conspiracy theory, that's the first time we see it. And you see it being used like, oh, it's a conspiracy theory. It's not really, nothing's really happening. And then it disappears for like 100 years. It comes back out in about 1964 when the New York Times publishes 5 stories with the term. And also, like Oxford University, they said something about this too. Hold on, what did they say? Okay, it's behind a paywall. But it says, conspiracy theories have been around for a long time, though how long is a matter of debate. As for the concept of conspiracy theory, it might seem reasonable to expect a more exact answer about the moment of emergence. When do we first find people talking and writing about conspiracy theories? While much of the literature points to the 20th century philosopher Karl Popper and his famous work, The Open Society and Its Enemies, in 1945, newspaper databases allow us to locate earlier occurrences of conspiracy theory. They reveal that the term proliferates in newspapers from the 1870s onward, particularly after the assassination of President Garfield in 81. Well, I don't suppose it's any conspiracy to think that people would want to take power. I mean, Game of Thrones, right? How would that be a conspiracy? Okay, well, so 1870, 1881, 1964, and then again in the 80s. And this was from an article on Snopes that I didn't print out. But the term really takes on the characteristics of today's usage because, of course, what were we talking about in the 80s? The Satanic Panic, Judas Priest was on trial, we're putting warning labels on music. So that was a really... But it's all conspiracy theory. I don't know what... It's just conspiracy theory. Conspiracy theory if you don't believe the standard explanation. Okay. And what is the standard explanation? Has anybody ever heard? They're just, there is no Pizzagate. There was no Watergate until there was. And then there was Watergate, whatever Watergate was. Spine. I don't know because, 1964 when the phrase had been dormant for a while, and then it shows up in the New York Times 5 times. So I tried to find these articles, and I couldn't find one. There's a lot of articles that the Times published in 64. This was one of them. 37 people who saw murder didn't call the police. Apathy at stabbing of Queens woman shocks inspector. I thought it might be Kitty. It's not Kitty that they're talking about. This happened in 1964. Kitty happened in the 80s. Okay, so 1964, what was happening was the Warren Commission. That's the investigation into Kennedy's death. And Chapter 6, in their investigation, Chapter 6 is the investigation of a possible conspiracy. And they do go through some of the things like the route, had it been published, had it not, had it been changed, who knew about the change, the chicken sandwich, all of that stuff. In Appendix 12, the speculations and rumors, they talk about what about the motor cop and the doctor at Parkland and all that stuff. So the Warren Commission, that was done by the FBI, the director of which was J. Edgar Hoover. Now, in 1967, the CIA was especially interested in maintaining its image. And through FAOI document 1035-960 was released. And from that document, quote, conspiracy theories have frequently thrown suspicion on our organization. For example, by falsely alleging that Lee Harvey Oswald worked for us. Now what they plan to do is employ propaganda assets to negate, and refuse the attack. So they're going to negate the critics and refute the attack. And I don't know if this is a full list of their points, because I found this one on the internet too. But their list was no new evidence, critics overvalue A, undervalue B, large scale conspiracy would be impossible to hide, attack the critics' intellectual pride, paint Lee Harvey Oswald as a joke, and dismiss accusations as vague. There's a modern agency. Let's see. This is from David Wilcox, The Ascension Mysteries, page 257. Dr. Stephen Greiser, director of the Disclosure Project, revealed this. Psychological opt to discredit whistleblowers was called a DDT campaign for decoy, distract, and trash. Decoy, right? Decoy, distract, and trash. DDT. So, put up this, distract them, trash them. That's why when you start throwing names around, you lose credibility in your argument. So that is the history of conspiracy theory. What you have, it's really bizarre, isn't it? It's really bizarre. Okay, so the conspiracy is that you don't believe in the official explanation. And yet, what is the official explanation of many things? Many things are just preposterous. Like, what is the official explanation of the how the Earth began? Was it a Big Bang? Was it a Big Bang? Did God create the world in 6 days? Maybe it was like 6 seconds, right? A Big Bang. I don't know, it just seems very strange that why wouldn't... It's the instead. That's where you get it all. I think, for us, I think our working definition is just going to be a plausible general principle that rejects the regularly and widely used explanation established by authority. So, without pitting blame on any other certain interest or any type of plot or intrigue or carefully arranged systematic program, surely it's possible to still reject a regularly and widely used explanation, right? Like, did anybody see My Cousin Vinny? And there's that scene, right, where he talks about the DA. The DA needs to build a case, and building a case is like building a house. And he wants you to think that he has a big brick bunker of a case. So he's going to show you his cards, that they're strong and they're solid looking. He's going to show you how straight they are and how they have the right shape. But what he's not going to show you is how thin it is. But still, when they go through these investigations, they want you to think that there's no new evidence, no way of looking at old evidence, that you've applied logical fallacies to evaluating the evidence. Which, why? When you're studying a diamond, you have to take in effect the cut, the color, the clarity, the carat. Cut, color, clarity, carat. There's one more C, right? There's the 5 C's. And all of these sort of affect each other, right? There's a German word, Gestalt, which I'm probably not saying right. It is the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. You can't just look at one or two things and think, I know, you know all of it. You can't. I mean, look how many times they change math. But there's no new evidence when you're talking about, already Jack Ruby and Lee Harvey Oswald, just, in this case. No new evidence. Oh, you want to hear something that's really interesting? Okay, let me find this. All right. The links between JFK and Lincoln. Both assassinated by Southerners, named Johnson, born in 08. Both assassins went by 3 names, born in 39, composed of 15 letters. Booth ran from the theater, was caught in a warehouse. Oswald ran from a warehouse, caught in a theater. As above, so below, inside out. Booth, Oswald, both assassinated before their trials. Kennedy was assassinated in a Lincoln car made by Ford. Lincoln was assassinated in Ford Theater. Ford. Gerald Ford served on the Warren Commission. He was a senator at the time. And he's an interesting guy. First off, Gerald Ford, that's not even his real name. He said, the 3 martini lunch, epitome of Americanism. You get an earful, a bellyful, and a snootful. And his old lady, Betty Ford, was a drunk. Remember the Betty Ford Clinic? And she danced on the White House tables. Could you imagine Melania doing that? They hobnobbed with celebrities. They were like they weren't the first, like, hobnob with celebrities, but they did hobnob with celebrities. And then listen to the batting order after this. Ford, Carter, Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama. That is, Ford also, he served as president and vice president, unelected to either office. He was Speaker of the House when Spiro Agnew was found guilty of tax fraud. And here's something that was really interesting. In 1967, let's see, this is from the book Death of the Nation by John A. Stormer. And if you have not heard of him, you need to get the book None Dare Call It Treason. That was written in 1956. This dude knows his shit. So they're talking about Vietnam. When Secretary of Defense McNamara refused to permit increasing bombing, the Republican leader of the House of Representatives, Gerald Ford, once a vocal advocate of winning the war, said, "I agree with Senator Symington that we might as well get out as quickly as we can, as best as we can." And then soon after that, Spiro Agnew, found guilty of tax fraud, he moves up to vice president. And then Nixon resigns because of Watergate, and he becomes president. And he appoints as his vice president Nelson Rockefeller, using the same law that allowed him to ascend. He takes the governor of New York and makes him vice president. So he was not elected either. Let's see. And by the way, China, because everything old is new again. Let's see. The Associated Press quoted Chinese Communist Party newspaper People's Daily as saying that a series of wars like the one in Vietnam will force the United States to dissipate its power around the world, weaken our country and its economy, and make us vulnerable to eventual takeover. Yeah, interesting. But don't question it, because then you'll be a truther. And you don't want to be a truther, because truth, you cannot, there's truth, and then there's the standard, I guess. And don't deviate. Don't deviate. Okay, so that's all for now, y'all. Thank you for listening to me talk about conspiracy theories and what they are. I don't know if we solved anything, but because I like talking about conspiracies, I appreciate that, and I'm certainly going to start giving y'all a whole lot of conspiracies and things to think about. Have fun.